Hello, everyone, and welcome to Picture This, a Big Brother Hometowns retrospective podcast, Season 6, Chapter 2, When Do I Make the Move? We are back after covering the first half of BBH Season 6, one of our favorite seasons, and we'll, of course, get into where it sits in the rankings later on in this episode. But we covered episodes 1 through 5 of BBH 6, and now we will hit up episodes 6 through the end, through the finale. So if you haven't watched that yet, go watch them. I believe that your listening and viewing experience of this will be much better if you have the source material from which we are pulling from, which is, of course, the episodes of BBH 6. So go check that out. And then, so hit pause, go watch it all on like 3x speed, and you'll get it all you need to know. And come on back and listen to us. I'm Josh Consalvo, your host as always, joined by special guest.
Special guest?
Special house guest from BBH 6. It's the org virgin at the time, or I guess he wasn't anymore. He was losing his org virginity. Mitchell Stokes, how are you, Mitchell?
I'm great, and I'm excited to wrap up one of my favorite seasons of Big Brother Hometowns. Completely unbiased opinion, of course, but one of my favorites nonetheless. And I'm excited to talk about just the good and the bad of the gameplay down the stretch. And I think we're going to have very different opinions about things, but I'm going to do my best to think strategically minded and be unbiased.
Yeah, so let's just set up what you're about to listen to for a second, because the discussion that will take place in this particular episode has been an ongoing discussion. This is here. I'll let you in on when we're recording this on Sunday, November 6th. Maybe it's
like 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years.
No, it's 3 years. It's 3 years.
Is it 3? Oh God.
Yeah, because
Lord. It's time for me to make my timely exit from the org, Dean. I think.
I know, right? Yeah. Let's see. Let's look at the dates of BBH 6, because I think we might be like right on the 3-year mark of when this may happen.
Honestly, because I remember there was like the few rounds before I was at like the big music education conference in North Carolina. And that's happening right now. Yep. Like in real time. So
BBH season 6 started on November 3rd, 2019. Today we're recording this on November 6th. So we're about just about 3-year anniversary of when this season actually happened. So
congrats to us, honestly.
Yeah,
congrats to us. Honestly, on a great season.
And that we're still doing this to this day.
I know, right?
Which is wild. But anyway, what I'm getting at here is the conversation we're going to have in this podcast is going to be centered around one move. And that one move is going to be centered around one person. And that one person is on screen with me right now.
No, whoa.
What I mean is,
I didn't do anything.
Okay. What I mean is, the move to take Mitchell out is the discussion. So we have been having this discussion, argument, dialogue since the day the season ended, and no one has come to terms. So are we going to come to terms?
I don't think you can, because honestly, I think you can see it both ways. And I really hope we can create and paint a good dialogue that's not just me defending myself and you defending Steven. And I think we can hopefully come to an agreement that maybe there is no right answer here, because I think we'll get there, but there's more to it than just like, did they backdoor me at the right time? What was I going to be doing? Like the thought process behind the whole thing. It's going to be a fun conversation, but I think we can get to a point where it's like, we're not going to put it to rest, because I think everybody's going to have different opinions, but we can come at it and think through it both directions and understand the thought processes of each side for sure.
Yeah, and before we jump in, I want you to know that you are your internet listener is just fine. It's just Mitchell's
having some difficulties today. Please.
his audio is fine. You should be able to hear him with no issue. Sometimes his picture will stop and you'll continue to hear him, and sometimes it'll be just fine.
Yeah,
so
I don't know. I'm literally sitting us 10 feet away from my router.
Yeah,
I can't do anything else.
So sit your iPad on your counter, do your dishes, tune in and out from the visual component, and just listen in as we talk about this season. So, okay, lot to get to. I have a feeling this could be a longer one. We'll see. Where we left you off was Ryan Marston, Cowboy Marston, got back into the game via the battle back, and that takes us into episode 6. So episode 6 starts with two people that are on the season, believe it or not, Callie and Brianna. I remember, I think it was Brianna. And that,
Yeah, Brianna.
Sorry, if you happen to be listening to this, Brianna, like somehow by a miracle, I apologize for not quite remembering which one you went by. Because
the goopery and the gaggery of this confessional is that she likes me, and we've probably exchanged a total of 15 DMs at this point in the game. Like, and I wish she would have said something, because maybe I would have thought to like communicate with her more, or to try something with her more. But that shocked me watching it back, for her to be like, yeah, I have my trio with Quinn, Callie, and me, and then we have our alliance of 5 with Jason and Steven, and then I really like Mitchell. And I was like, whoa, what the heck?
What I wrote is Callie and Bree give confessionals, happy for them.
Yeah. and not, listen, one of them is going to go out nonchalantly, but one of them is going to put up a little bit of a fight and have a little bit of, like, I could see a return, like if they were actually in the game, like there's a spark there.
We get a confessional from Sarah that she's thrilled that Ryan is back. That obviously is really good for her game. They have a pre-existing connection, and so that's good for Sarah, because she didn't want to take Ryan out. But Sarah is actually in a great spot, because she's absolved of all guilt. Like, she was never guilty for any of this.
And it's a secret that she keeps all the way to the finale. She keeps the secret that she was complicit. I mean, essentially, like, I gave her, if you remember from last chapter, I gave her the opportunity to put the kibosh on the Ryan back door, and she didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And so she was 100% complicit in it, and she keeps that secret and nourishes that relationship and uses it to her advantage throughout the rest of this game. And it's a great thing for her game that he comes back, and I mean, she uses it and she plays it really well.
Yeah. And then the pieces need to be picked up by your side of the house at this point, and you do that pretty easily, because everyone on your side has a good enough relationship with Sarah, and you guys just say, all right, Sarah,
do you remember what we did?
You just slotted her in.
And we just added her to the chat.
I mean, that's not surprising at all.
No, I know, but like, now I'm like, why did we do that? Like, because if anyone with half a brain is going to scroll back and see that, well, they weren't initially in the alliance, even though Sarah knew about it because I had told her.
Right.
But like, it's just like a really bad move on our part to like put her into that without making a new chat or anything like that. It's kind of a crazy circumstance.
Yeah. I mean, but you just slot her in and you keep on marching on, and that was great. We once again took from Sequester season 2 here with a twist in the game, which has like a little bit of, like, not a ton of implication, but has some. Put in the bounty twist, where basically, we've done this a couple times in BBH, haven't done it in a while, where everyone gets a bounty, and if your bounty goes home through any means, you would get an advantage or safety or whatever. In this case, you were getting the same advantage that Quinn had, the cube that would just like an immunity idol of sorts. And you, Mitchell, got who'd you get?
I had Quinn. And ultimately, Quinn is going to be the one who goes home. This is like, it's such a, like, for me, it's like, it was such a good thing, and also such a, like, retrospectively, it's such a bad thing that happens to my game, because I told the truth.
Right.
And like, I told the truth 100% of the time, who my bounty was, when I got the advantage, what the advantage was. And, you know, I mean, like, the thing is, I mean, Ryan coming back in the game was good for me, because when Steven rises to power ultimately in this episode of, you know, this round, I could have easily been his target. But because there were once again 3 returners in the game, he had a bigger, like, thing to accomplish, which was continuing to try and, you know, get the returners out.
Yeah, and I see this less about the returners and more about Quinn specifically in this round, which we'll get into. So the competition was entitled, I think it was called the Who Sucks the Most Challenge.
Well, it was according to me, yes.
Yeah, according to you.
I love that confessional. I watched that confessional back and I live for myself. Like it's such great narration. It's like me taking a bunch of licks from my cast about like being a liar, being like not having a chance to win, like whatever. Like
it was such a weird overestimation of your game too.
Truly,
I guess you were the most visible villain because you did the Pandora thing, but no one really like hated you. So you were just like you were a victim of perception of like of the perception of the perception of the perception. Yeah. What I mean by that is like everyone is thinking, oh, they're probably going to say Mitchell for things like this because he did that thing. When in reality, it's like, hey, we
I don't think anybody on the cast disliked me except Steven. But
he didn't even dislike you. He just
he just didn't trust me. But no, I appreciate looking back at that and not letting it have taken me like making me upset, and instead I chose to embrace it and like had fun with it. And I think it dictated a lot of how I approach board games, like in that moment, because I was like, oh, I just got like eviscerated by my cast. I'm gonna choose to like let it go, and I'm gonna choose to have fun with it. And I'm glad I made that choice because I think it's kind of carried through, like throughout the games that I've played, and I just haven't been like letting other people affect me in that regard. But yes, the Who Sucks the Most challenge.
Yeah, otherwise known as touchy subjects. If you haven't like picked that up by this point, played touchy subjects here, and Steven wins HOH. You know, you always look at that at a touchy subjects winner.
I was pumped.
Yeah, as you should be, and this works out for you still.
Yeah,
but I think you always look at a touchy subjects winner and say like, okay, they have a good perception of the nature of the game and where things are at. And Steven showed that here. I guess we can. I should pull up the. Oh no, it was in. Did I write it down?
The video. It was in the like. It's in. You put it in the episode of like who did this. I mean, there really wasn't anything shocking that comes out of this touchy subject. It's pretty standard. Like I was a villain. You know, Sarah was the nicest, which I mean is really gonna be such a moniker for how the rest of the season goes, and her story throughout the rest of the season. But that's really, I mean, really all that happens coming out of this type of subjects. I mean, I was the most popular boy in the school, as I said in my confessional. So
yep. We also hear from Steven, and basically Steven is you hate this confessional, don't you?
Well, it's so ridiculous to be like, I'm gonna be the hero that everybody needs, and I'm like, girl.
Well, I mean, he does the thing where he tries to set up like, this is why I'm gonna put Ryan Abbey on the block. I need everyone to believe this, because we're obviously backdooring Quinn. Quinn does not buy this. He sees right through it. I mean, he put Ryan and Abby up, so you have the returner thing at the very least to be like, well, if one of those comes off, I'm the other the other obvious target to go up here. So Steven is setting up this backdoor, and then we get a Ryan Marston confessional, which I love, and he's just like talking about like Steven says, you're gonna have to trust me. and Ryan's like, he says, I don't know how you Northerners talk. First of all, Steven is not a Northerner, but he goes, I don't know how you Northerners talk. He goes, I'm just sitting here with my country fried steak and my barbecue and my meat. So, and the rest of my meats. Okay. And he's like trying to like play the character while also talk strategy about how there's a backdoor in play. And Ryan is like still naive enough in the game to not quite see that yet.
Right.
It's so just funny. It's mess.
It's great TV. I mean, it's really good TV. I'm really more intrigued here by the conversation about Steven being on this vengeance mission, like to get revenge for them backdooring Maddie instead of evicting me. Kind of like, and it's very intriguing to me because I know that he had a good relationship with Maddie and Parker. Obviously, we were in an alliance with them. I didn't realize it was that strong that he was so like, I have to get revenge for her. And I have to wonder if it's more so Quinn didn't do what I wanted him to do, and so now he has to pay for it. Kind of revenge. I don't know what your take on that is, but
Yeah, so I actually have Steven's take on this. So so as you know, I've been talking to Steven through this process, and you know, we've talked a lot about things. And so because I asked him, I said, was this the right move for you? Like, did you have to do this? Like, Quinn was not necessarily coming after you or really at all, because you guys were building this bond. Did you need to do this? And this is what Steven has to say. He said, I genuinely lost every bit of faith I had, every bit of faith in playing with him when I felt completely left in the dark by the Maddie back door, especially given that it was supposed to be Mitchell. Like, he was thrilled. He's like, this is, you were served up on a silver platter. He didn't have to do anything. And so the way that he goes about this Maddie back door, which we talked about last time, just completely was bad. And then he said, more importantly, my alliance wanted Quinn out because of what he had just done to Maddie. So, like, he has to do this to keep himself in a power position where the people in the game that are not, or that are in control of what's going on, that are winning comps, need to take out the sole person on the other side that could make any noise, because no one else was going to win a comp. Ryan, Abby, Bree, Callie, no one, whatever, like whatever you deem the other side was not going to win any comps. He makes the easy move despite it being a quote unquote big move, but it's just taking out a big player. And though I think there's a world where he could have kept Quinn, I think that does more harm than good with you guys, because that's what you guys all wanted. And he was not showing any disloyalty up to this point.
Right. And if he'd have backdoored me at this point in time, he would have lost Sarah. You know, he would have lost Sarah. He would have lost Parker. Who knows how Jason would have ultimately felt about that at that point in time. Like, he could have really hurt himself there.
Right. Which is why when we get to your move, I think for Steven, when we get to your move, we have to talk about through the lens of Steven and through Jason, which are two very different things. And I think Steven has set himself up very well to be able to get someone else to make the move on you, which we will get to in a moment. Quinn is evicted 5-2 here. We didn't even talk about, you won the veto here. You won the veto. We backdoor Quinn, and Quinn goes home 5-2.
Yeah, and I remember. Well, I do remember, and I want to say, like, I remember not actually ever having any intention of working with Ryan again in the game after he came back, because I was literally crapping my pants when he did come back. I did use the veto on him here in an attempt to try and bridge the gap. I remember sending that Lizzie McGuire white flag gif to be like, hey, I'm gonna use the veto on you. Can we reopen a dialogue? That would be great. But it was just purely hey, I'm doing you a solid. Can we be even? But it was never gonna.
But I think that's just smart gameplay.
It's smart gameplay. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It was a game move, but I don't think Ryan ever really literally the first opportunity they have to take me out, it's Mitch, I've been waiting to get you out. And so it didn't do anything for me, but it was for the greater good of getting Quinn out.
Yeah. And so that ends the story. The Trey Rob spot for Quinn here. Quinn 3.0. He plays an okay game.
It's a shame because he had, not that it should matter, but he did have a lot of connections coming into the game that he should have been able to capitalize. It's just really unfortunate for him that he's the only person on his side of things that could win anything.
Right.
There's lots of stories in that there's lots of alliances in the history of BBH that suffer from that affliction, that can't win anything.
Right.
And Quinn is just unfortunately the person who was the most visible in that side, and he just had to go because of it. So
agreed. And the Maddie move blew up in his face. He had returnee struggle on him. There was just not a whole lot that Quinn can do here. We will see Quinn again. We will see 4.0. We will see 5.0. And we will talk about those things
Lord.
when they come. we open up episode 7. I'm not going to leave a Cowboy Marston quote unturned, stone unturned here, because he has that stupid Guitar Hero guitar, and he's singing American Girls, and he's hitting the Guitar Hero buttons and then he just looks up the camera and goes, "Oh, sorry, just tuning up the old guitar here, had it in drop D. Cowboy Marston here anyways." Just,
I love that you're living for this, because I wrote so stupid.
That's so bad. No, it's so good though. It is so stupid, but it's so funny. And this is he's still playing this character to this day. He's playing in the trivia league with a hat that says Cowboy Marston on it. It's not. It will never. This is who he is. It's not even a character anymore. I don't remember. I don't think he said anything of importance because I would have written it down. So he does that. We get a confessional from Abby, and to talk about that quickly, she's sad that Quinn is gone, recognizes he's a good player, blah 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 blah. Abby plays a bad game. The more I think about it,
I agree with you. It's crazy to me that she was in contention to win had she made it to the end, because she was there.
Right.
I love Abby to death, but she didn't do anything except ride the block and have this story of resilience, which I guess that is
sure
redeemable enough. But yeah, she didn't really do anything.
But why is she even remotely happy that Quinn has gone here? She shouldn't be. She needs him, but instead they just I think I said this last time, Three Stooges themselves, bumping heads the whole time, instead of just playing together they should have from the start. They were just play together, give each other your full trust, and that's it. Yes, Quinn is a good player. If you look at that in a vacuum and say we got a good player out of the game, that it furthers me. But right. Abby, you're just a sitting duck over and over and over and over and over again in this season. And Abby plays so many times. So I don't want to necessarily say this is her worst showing.
It's not.
You don't think it? Do you think 14 is worse?
I think 14 is worse.
Okay, fair.
I think 14, she was way too dug in to the people that she connected with early on, and she was just so inflexible. I think 10, she played similarly, actually, like that in 10, but she had better people around her to help support her and help her play a better game. That's just my take.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it down the road, I'm sure.
Yeah. Anyway, Abby's still in the game, so we'll talk more about her later. We do get the Steven talking about the advantage situation where, like, I think even apart from the part about him not trusting you, I can understand him being, and this is a very unintended thing. In my mind, I just put the advantage back in the game like Survivor would put an idol back in the game.
Right.
And that was my thought process. And I never even considered how that could sow distrust of, like, oh, why would he put the same advantage right back in the game? So I remember in the moment thinking, oh, that's kind of a funny
and it was production riggery against me. Because I was honest about, like I said earlier, I was honest. I didn't lie. I told them the truth about what the advantage was, and production rigged the game against me. You heard it here first. But yeah, no, Steven didn't believe me, and I agree with you. I understand why he didn't believe me. It just was annoying to look. It's annoying to look back at it and be like, well, I was being honest.
Right.
And I will say that this advantage informs so much of how I personally was approaching the end game of BBH6, because for me, it made all the sense in the world to just ride it to 5, given the advantage. In my perfect world, like, had I made it one more round, Sarah was the HOH at 7. We would have done that round, gotten out whoever the last 2 people were. We get to 5. I use my advantage. I yeet myself out of the house. I let them handle their stuff at the final 4/5. I come back in the game, and then I either win my way out or I pick up the pieces based on what it was. For me, it all made perfect sense. And that's, for me. And I understand that that's my perfect path to the end. But
yeah,
it informed it never crossed my mind to backstab Steven or Jason. It never crossed my mind to not play with the hard hitters, because I had this advantage in pocket and knew that if I could ride it for as long as I could, I was going to be fine. And I was going to come out the other side be better off.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, that's just.
I know. I agree with everything you're saying, and I think you just defended why the move is good.
Firstly, they don't know that. Firstly, nobody else in the game knew that. Like, they knew I had the advantage, but they didn't know what my plan was.
Sure, but like, it's not rocket science.
Sure. Okay, fine. But I still. I mean, we haven't even gotten there yet. But I still think, like, let's not get the, like. I'm just saying. I just wanted to point out that from this point on, when I get the advantage, the way that I was playing was based off of because I got it.
Yeah.
Had I played differently, who knows? You know, had I not gotten it, who knows what would happen? But for me, getting the advantage informed the way that I was approaching that alliance and the game. And I was just like, eat these guys out of here. You know, that was me. We'll get to the other side of it in a second, but that's like, and I haven't even made my statements about the move. I'm just saying for me, for Mitchell.
Right.
That
I know. I'm with you. All right.
Yeah.
This episode is a snoozer that we're about to talk through. So, like, we have the most exciting thing that happens, I believe, is me standing next to a TV dancing to the Family Feud music.
Love it.
A lot of fun. We do the Family Feud co-HOH thing. There's like a little bit of strategy here, but once you understand that strategy, the rest of it's just easy peasy. Jason and Mitchell, Abby and Sarah, Bree and Parker, Ryan and Callie, from anyone in the main alliance, the Hard Hitters Alliance, knows that the only pair that can't win this is Ryan and Callie, and because then they don't have any sort of control over the nominees. Who knows what the world would have looked like if Ryan and Callie win this HOH?
Yeah,
I don't even think they were that far off from it. I mean, I'm not going to look up the scores, but if memory serves, they were in it. I mean, it's like the fast money round of Family Feud, so like, you know, anyone could do well at it, and I think they did okay. So Sarah and Abby end up winning here, and once again, this is like Abby's hands are tied.
She is, but she does fumble the bag. She didn't give anybody the option. Had she thrown up me, had she thrown up Steven, had she thrown up Jason, people would have had the choice to make. She didn't even give them the choice.
Right. She just said, okay, I'll do whatever. Like, but they're not there. She doesn't know. Now, this is a fault on her game. This is a fault on Bree and Callie's game. Like all these people that aren't putting the pieces together. What you have in this season is a group of people like mastering a game that isn't being played. Like really, like you guys are like strategizing. The people around it are like la-di-dying their way through.
We had such a false impression of what was actually happening. We thought that all of them were together. It turns out, you know, Callie hated Abby, and the feeling was mutual. Like, you know, and we thought that they were just working together because they were connected through Quinn. But once that connection broke, once Quinn was gone, we vastly underestimated the relationship dynamic there. And I mean, the people who use it successfully, like Steven, is why he's successful and he's able to pull off the move that he can, you know, because he has a better grasp of what that relationship how that relationship actually stands.
And so since there's no fight put up at all, we just have very simple who are the nominees here? Bree and Callie here on the block. Bree and Callie on the block. There's a confessional from you where you're just kind of annoyed that they aren't trying at this point. But whatever. You and the veto, don't use it.
And I want to say once again, production rigging the season against me when you say that this was one of the biggest blowouts in Big Brother Hometowns history.
And it was. I don't even remember what was the competition.
It was Simon Says.
Oh, it was the Simon Says game. Yeah.
And I made it like 20 something rounds, and the next longest person was like 8. And you were like, it's like the biggest.
Okay, once again, people, if I just say the score is like no big deal, like whatever. Yeah, sure. Definitely rigging against you.
Yeah.
And Bree is evicted 4-1 here. And
do you know that I spun a wheel to determine which one of them left? Did you know that?
No.
I remember sending I don't know if I sent it, where I sent it or who I sent it to, but we were like, so who's going to leave, Bree or Callie? And nobody cared. And so I just put their names on a wheel spinner, spun the wheel and sent it to the chat and was like, this is who the wheel has chosen. And we sent Bree home because of it.
Yeah.
So.
Amazing. Callie shows up in the confessional, and you're gonna like attempt to give her credit for like doing something here and being mad, but like, you know, whatever.
Well, it's in the confessional. Sure, I think I'm speaking more from experience because
right.
she was fully ready. Like at that point in time, before I got backdoored, she was like, Mitchell, I need you. Like you're my like one lifeline left in this game. Like I don't trust Steven and Jason. I don't trust, yada 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 yada. Like, and that's we're gonna talk about it through this episode, why she's feeling like that. But before I get backdoored, she's like, you and I have to do something. We have to. And like she was like someone that like she had a lot of fight in her in that one day of the game. That you don't see that in the confessionals, obviously.
Right.
That's just like a lived experience.
Right. So we get to episode 8, the infamous episode 8, BBH6, episode that lives in infamy.
Bad.
Opens up with Steven saying, when do I make the move? And this is how Steven sets it up. And he's setting it up not even knowing that the opportunity is going to become available to him. This is pre-HOH, all this stuff. And he is talking about the 5. And he knows that no one in the 5 really trusts Jason, which is true. And he knows that if he exploits that to Jason and says, hey, none of these people trust you, like we can use that, which is good because no one trusts Jason, not Steven. And Steven knows that at the end of the day, none of them sans Jason. And even Jason at that point, because even Jason was going to eventually want to turn on Steven because he thinks that's the smart thing to do, which I can get there, but whatever, not really important. None of the people in the alliance were ultimately going to choose Steven at the end of the day. And so he needed to like make something happen at some point. And he is like racking his brain as to the timing, because the timing is everything. And I talk about in the episode prior, at the end of the episode, I talk about, I think a move could be coming. But with my overall like foresight, I know the double eviction is coming, which kind of messes with things a little bit. So when does this right move? When is the right time for this move? It's kind of hard to know exactly. Then we get a confessional from you, and you have no clue what's about to come from that round. So you're just talking about like the Brianna and Callie of it all, which they're like Callie's all angry and blah, 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 blah. You're just talking through that. It's whatever.
It's not important. I mean, it was funny to me at first because like, as I was watching it back, I was like, oh, I'm being shady. like, as I was trying not to be mean, I remember like, I was trying not to be mean, but I was like, it was so sad. Not really. Like, that's so shady.
That leads us to the infamous C4 HOH, which I don't even know how much of the episode you can really get. You can you can tell that this happened in the HOH, but HOH is C4. We got to a point where it was down to you and Jason ultimately,
and I was winning. I was kicking butt in that competition. I would have easily won it had it gone on for the full duration.
But then we get to a point.
We get to a point where Jason's like, Mitchell, I really want to be HOH. And I was like, oh, that's perfect because he's in my alliance. I can play for next week's HOH. Like, this is going to work out perfectly for me. Okay, Jason, make a public deal with me that you won't nominate me. That's all I want.
I think we had gotten to a point where Jason had taken a lead. I feel like I stopped
trying. He was like, Mitchell, can you stop trying? And I was like, okay, fine. And like, but like had I not stopped, I would have won.
Right.
And but we did get to a point where you stopped and you're like, hey, Jason, like, is everybody else conceding? Jason's like got a lead. And I was like, well, Jason, I could probably come back. Will you like promise that you won't put me up on the block in front of God and everybody? Will you make that promise? And he was like, yeah, I won't put you up. And so I was like,
which at the point of the deal being struck, he was very much going to keep up his end of the bargain. 100%. He was telling you the truth at that moment. Things obviously change for the worse for you, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
And so Jason nominates Abby and Callie. nothing crazy here. And then we get to the POV day, and I put something together that I've never thought about until like this. What do you think I'm gonna say?
I know exactly what you're gonna say.
So
the reason why I continue to block GeoGuessr from ever being a comedy.
So
and I will be making a niche the challenge reference for any of our listeners. That's my freaking phobia. Okay, GeoGuessr, that's my freaking phobia.
Yeah. So the challenge was GeoGuessr, which is a fine comp. Like
it sucks. I hate it so much.
But every time Max Teddy obviously loves it. If you know Max, he loves maps and geography and all that stuff. So like makes sense that he likes GeoGuessr. And every season that we host together, he tries to insert GeoGuessr into the lineup of comps for the season.
And I shut it down
Mitchell
so
instantly
fast.
shuts it down every single time. And I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. I'm not getting in the middle of this.
I knew exactly what you were going to bring.
And then I realized that this is the veto that Steven wins that gets you out was GeoGuessr. So you are scarred. It's a triggering comp.
It is. I have stress. I have trauma. I don't think that it's a winnable game if you've never done it before. And I don't think that makes it fair for for people to have to compete in it. Especially it's a pretty common game that's used in orgs. And so if you've done it before, you understand the But even I
also think that since then, GeoGuessr has surged in popularity and it's probably improved. Some I haven't played it,
maybe,
but I think it has. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and it will never be in a season of BBH again. I'm gonna mark my freaking words.
BBH 25. Oops, all GeoGuessers coming your way.
And I'm the only one on the cast.
Yeah,
and I have to compete against myself.
It's a simulation of all Mitchell Stokes playing GeoGuessr every round. So he can't win, but he also can't lose. So Steven wins this veto, which is also really interesting because I think at this point Abby was in contention to win it, and I thought she was going to win it, which would have made this move even easier for the likes of Steven and Jason. But Steven goes ahead and wins the veto anyway. He goes and has a conversation with Jason. Jason did not want to do it. He was not on board with this. But Steven lays out the things. Steven and Jason, I should have said this last episode. They were one of the few people in the season that they consistently had calls together.
Yeah.
They talked a lot, face to face, so to speak. And so that built a good bond between them. And so when Steven's able to get to Jason in a phone call in the situation and say, nobody trusts you. They're not going to choose you anyway. We are at the bottom of this alliance. It's time to flip it on its head. And you're going to be the one to do it, Jason.
Yeah. I mean, from the perspective of, for Steven, it's great that Jason is going to be the person to do it. I remember two things about that day, particularly. One was that I was laying back, sitting there comfy with my feet up, and I was ready to move on to the next round. And then the other thing I remember is being so mad at Jason and going to Steven and begging Steven to keep me, thinking that Jason had gone rogue. And
right.
I remember saying, Steven, please don't let Jason do this. Please, let's get to 5 together. Let's do what we set out to do. I wasn't upset with Steven at that point in time because I didn't realize to the extent that it was both of them. Even though it should have made sense in my head because Steven used the veto and obviously he knew what was going on.
Right.
I still was don't let Jason manipulate you into doing this, Steven. Don't let him get this on his credit. Don't let him get this on this resume. Be the person that takes me out later. I was trying to throw anything, but I remember being so furious at Jason and not mad at all at Steven, which is so insane.
Right. Which is great for Steven, obviously. And so real quick, I just want to throw shade at Callie, who has a confessional in the middle of this where she's all angry, I can't believe he used a veto on blah 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 and blah. Or she's so
I don't blame her at all.
Yeah, but if any Why?
He promised her that if he ever won the veto, he would use it on her.
Sure.
And then he has the opportunity to use it on her, and he uses it on Abby instead. And I understand his reasoning because, and I do think he is correct. It's annoying to admit, but he is correct. I think Callie would have voted Abby out, and I would have stayed. Right. So he reads the situation correct. But I understand from Callie's perspective why she's pissed.
Right, but it's someone that doesn't have enough information in the game to understand why this is.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It's still
it does.
It's still her it's still her opinion and her
right. But if she if she could see the forest for the tree, she would know that this is like this like she'll be fine, and she still has people that she can have trust with, instead of just saying like seeing.
I'm not saying she doesn't play it well. I'm not saying she plays it well. I'm just I understand the anger, and I kind of live for the I'm just gonna burn it all down mentality. I kind of live for that.
Yeah, but it's all bark and absolutely no bite.
Because she doesn't win anything. Had she won something, who knows?
Yeah, but you can make stuff happen without winning anything. Like, it's a little harder, but you could at least be a part of anything. But whatever. This is
not what we're here to argue.
Yeah, this is I'm not gonna lose sleep over an argument about Callie Smith. I think she got married recently. We're still friends on Facebook.
Congrats.
Congrats, Callie. Or engaged. I think she's one of the two. Anyway. In terms of the episode, Mitchell is evicted 3-2. Those 3 votes to evict you are Ryan, Abby, and Steven, of course. And the 2 votes to save you are Parker and Sarah. And remember, Parker's still in this game. If we haven't said his name once, he is still in the game.
Can we just jump into this?
Yes.
I know that this is what we're I'm just going to say, the question that has constantly been stated over, like you said, over the course of the last 3 years is this the right time for them to make this move on me? My opinion, obviously, is slightly impacted by the fact that it comes at my expense. But I have put a lot of thought into what happens if I stay. I mean, let's look at the facts. Abby, who was sitting on the block and would have gone home that round, is sitting in the final 3. Jason and Steven are not. So by taking, but it's the same thing that just happened in BBH 17, where the question is, do we flip on Megs and Lauren? Do we take out one of them and leave Stephanie and Nikki in the game? And then all of a sudden you blink your eye and Stephanie and Nikki are sitting at the end in the final 3. Right? So the fact of the matter is, if they had taken Abby out there, Abby wouldn't have been a factor down the stretch of the season. She's sitting in a spot that Steven or Jason could have been sitting in at the final 3. Secondly, okay, fine, you take out Abby there, you don't take me out. That is what, final 8? You have 5 more evictions.
It takes us to final 7 next.
So that was 8th place. So 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, and 3rd. There's 5 more evictions, opportunities to take me out. I was winning comps, and I understand that. I was not prepared for the end game of BBH 6 and what that entailed. They would have had plenty of opportunities to get me out. Steven puts himself in a position at the final 8 where he has to win out in order to win the game. And as you remember, when we talked through BBH season 3, I did not like when Max put himself in that situation at the final 8 when he tried to backdoor Quinn and had to win out to win the game. What ultimately happens is that Max is just ultimately the one who's able to do it, and Steven is not. Whereas, had they kept me in the game at 8, I would have still been a target for every single person in that game over Steven and over Jason. And they would have had 5 chances to take me out, and then they could have gotten one step further to the game, to the end of the game. That's, for me, why I don't think it was the right time, and I don't think it's a good move. I understand that what you're going to say is, Mitchell, you had this whole plan about Sarah. We know that Sarah's going to win the next HOH, which is going to get you to 5. You're going to play your advantage, which is going to get you to 4. I understand that that's what you're going to say. But
that's part of what I'm going to say.
In that moment, Nobody knew any of that.
Okay.
Nobody knew any of that. And you had no way to know that that's what was going to happen. You can't predict the future and say that retroactively it's a good move because that was my plan. You can't say that it was a good move because that was my plan. Because that's a future thing that's going down the line. I am going to shut up now. Okay. But that's my opinion of why I don't think it's a good move.
Okay. I think your philosophies are contradicting in the sense that you are saying, oh, you can do these things in the future. And you are also saying, like, oh, they shouldn't worry about what I'm going to do in the future. Like,
that's not what I said.
Yes, it is. You said,
I said
they don't know about my plans in the future. Like,
I said, you can't say, I said, you, Joshua, cannot say that they should make this move because of my plan.
Right. But
I'm saying in that moment of the game.
Yeah. They can look at they absolutely can say, first of all, Steven knew that you had some kind of advantage. So like let's not pretend that
for sure.
And like I said, also wasn't rocket science to figure that out. 2, you have to assume if you've know any BBH that there is a double eviction coming up. So like
but nobody did. Who knew?
Whether you know or not, like I think it's inconsequential.
Nobody knew. No, none of us knew. None of us knew because none of us. I mean, Abby should have known.
Right.
Ryan maybe should have known. Nobody else had that thought in their brain. I was shocked when I got to the jury, and then the next moment you're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, tomorrow's a double eviction." I was like,
sure. Like that aside, I still think that you can look at. If I'm Steven, I look at your game and say, I know he has an advantage, and you are also not. You are talking in generic game absolutes. Like they will have this chance to get me, and this chance to get me, this chance to get me, and that is apart from the social landscape of the game, where you are very well positioned in your alliance, and and any opportunity to get you out has to be surrounded in the right circumstance to have the numbers to do so. And if you lose Abby, you are losing a number to do that. And that's going to make it a little bit harder. That's one thing. And yes, there is the Sarah wins the like looking at what did. And if you're going to say, okay, Abby makes it to the final 3 because we don't take her out here. We like I had anything to do with it. Yeah. Because they don't take her out here. Like you can't also. What was I you got me all spin up.
That's what I'm here to do, baby. Yeah, I'm gonna spin this to my advantage.
That's not working. I have so many arguments that I start one and then I don't remember where it resolves before I can get on to the next one. Yeah, you're like, oh, they have all these opportunities in the future to get me out. This is the results orient of what's going on. What was I gonna say? Oh, well, let me just think. I'm going to cut this.
Something that didn't make sense, probably.
No, it makes sense. What I'm saying is, you were like, oh, Abby makes it to the end, and so therefore, like, you missed your opportunity to get out Abby. Like, that's part of your argument.
Well, no, the argument is, by taking out me, Abby never Abby, like, she's taking up a seat. Point blank period at the end. That is what happened, but like it's the same, like I said, it's the same thing that just happened where you don't demolish the side that you're trying to get out, and then all of a sudden they're in the end. Like
sure. And that is like one result orient way of thinking about it. They are in the end, but in the same regard, the alternate universe is that you are at the end. Whereas like Abby goes home and then you make it to the end and Steven likely still does not. If you're looking at the board and saying, and I'm Steven, like, how do I give myself the best chance to win the game? Right. I think taking you out here is the opportunity because you're throwing it all on Jason. You're throwing it all. Let me finish. You're throwing it all on Jason. It's all Jason's fault. If I don't know that a double eviction is coming next, the person that's going home is Jason. Jason is next. That gives you a whole round to pick up the pieces of this move. And Sarah even says in the next round, I'm still good with Steven. Like, I have to put him up here in this double eviction, but I'm still good with Steven. Steven's a good enough player, and he's shown that over and over again to be able to pick up the social pieces to connect it to his strategy piece to get him to the end. Now, there's another humongous part of this if we're going to talk about the results orient, because you're saying, oh, well, Steven just put himself in a position where he had to win himself to the end. And in some respect, that is true. but he wins at the final 5. And for whatever godforsaken reason, and not to skip to get to that, they don't take Sarah or Abby out, the two biggest competition threats outside of Steven, who was ineligible to go home at that point. They take out Parker. Ryan Marston takes out Parker, the only person in the game that he can still beat.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with whether this was a good move or not.
Of course it does.
Because, no, it doesn't.
Yes, of course.
No. It doesn't.
Because if you are optimally playing to the end, taking you out here still is okay, because Steven's not on an island at Final 5 at this point, because there's still visible targets to take out. And so you're saying that Steven had to win himself to the end. At the point that he got there, he was not having to win himself to the end.
What I'm saying is that by taking me out, Steven and Jason they had already lost trust with Callie because they didn't play the veto on her. Abby had just got put up on the block by Jason. Parker and Sarah lose a lot of trust in them because they make this move against me. They have put themselves in a worse position. If this was happening in the real time and we were on morning tea talking about this, we would all hate this move. Because
I don't think that's true.
I 100% think it's true, because we talk constantly about how people make moves and put themselves in worse positions and how that's bad gameplay. They literally went from a place where they secure Alliance of 5. Yes, were they on the bottom? Yes. We've already established that. I'm not arguing that
then what is the win path for Steven?
They win. No matter what the path is, they have to win. That's the problem with their games. At this point in time, no matter what happens with them, they have to win out. Because no matter what, because
why is it bad to take out the top target in terms of win equity from a actual win the game perspective and a competition perspective? You're the only threat left to win competitions realistically. Now, Steven doesn't win himself to the end, so there's other people along the way that should have been taken out at Final 5. But why is how does taking you out move the needle in that respect for Steven?
I mean, I think that's a fair statement. I don't have much to say to that, but I think that that's part of the issue with any of it is because no matter their position, unless they had completely flipped and started working with Callie, Abby, and I think there's a world where I'm more on this move, more positive on this move, if instead of just taking me out and trying to continue to play both sides, that they make this complete flip and they're like, hey, Jason's like, Mitchell, Sarah, you're on the block, or Parker, Sarah, Parker, Mitchell. And you know what I mean? And they're just they cast us to the side, because then I feel like there's more room for them to play. By the way that they play it, I feel like it just puts them in this position where they have no choice but to have to win out from the final 8, and 2 people can't win out from the final 8.
Sure. I see that. I think that what Steven does, Steven shows his ability to be flexible all down the line. He never, and I'm okay. I disagree, because I don't think there's a middle anymore to be played. I think this broke the game open where everyone needs to kind of pick up their own pieces. But what I do want to say is that part of this whole issue is you, and not to inflate your ego, but the hold you had on that alliance and the game you were playing, and what you were doing, there was no place for them to go. Right. Now, sure, they could have stand pat and got picked off at 4 or 3.
Well, but again,
they do otherwise,
which is what happens anyway. But also, they had a chance. If we truly had gone to 5 together, and I had taken myself out of it,
you're throwing every competition.
I put my money on. Well, I'm just saying, if we had gotten to 5, I used my advantage. I put my money on Jason and Steven to come out of that alive versus Parker and Sarah. And so then I'm sitting in the final 4 with me, Parker, Jason, and Steven, and that's not great for me. That's really good for one of them, most likely. You know what I mean? So I think the path. I don't think that had I stayed in at Final 8 that I was winning the game. I don't think that's true. I think I had a good shot. I would have been in the Final 4 for sure.
Yeah, I
But
think you beat Abby. Yeah, I think you do. I think you have a great shot to win. I mean, you can't predict the final HOH by
sure.
any means, but I think you win that final four veto over Abby, because Steven was very, very close, and you would have known at that point to like some
No,
of
I
the
don't think I would have.
I think some of the game knowledge stuff had started to creep in, and you would have figured out to know your stuff. Because Steven
really
figured it
don't.
out. Steven didn't know that
Sure.
stuff, and he figured it out and almost beat Abby in that final veto.
Yeah. I really don't think that would have been the case, because I remember getting to like people coming into the jury and being like, oh, this was what the comp was. And I would be like, oh, there's no way. Like, so I think do I think I had a good shot at winning? Yes. Do I respect Steven and Jason for making this move? Of course I do. I really enjoyed playing this game with them. I really enjoy them as people. There's a lot of love still 3 years later. I'm not upset about
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
We're not like arguing or upset. I just, from a strategic perspective, it's not it for me.
I think it's very easy to say that about. I mean, we didn't talk about the two perspective. From Jason's point of view, this is bad. The only part of it that's like remotely good is the truth behind the fact that no one trusts him. But this doesn't help that cause, and he is the easiest of targets in the next round, and is picked off without a hitch. I think for Steven, this. Maybe it doesn't move the needle for Steven in terms of his ability to win ultimately, but I think that taking you out is you are the biggest threat to win the game at that point, because you weren't that big of a threat in the perception of anyone but Steven. And he, as he narrates all season, knows that the move had to be done. And maybe there's a part of Steven that got too big in his head, but I think Steven was smart enough the whole time that
no, I mean, for real,
he took the opportunity.
Yeah, no, and to his credit, Steven knew exactly what I was doing. He was my Achilles heel the entire season, and he ultimately gets the upper hand on me. I have no issue with that. That's the game. That's the game that we all signed up to play. Again, I'm just going to state, I don't, just like I said with Max, puts himself in a position where he burns a lot of people and has to win out to win the game. That's exactly what Steven and Jason do here at this moment, and it's why I don't like the move. And I feel like it's not coming from a point of
I don't love the Max comparison.
Well, I just think it's a precedent, and I think it's fair because I think it's going to be really easy for you, Steven, for anybody listening to this to be, well, Mitchell, you just are mad because Steven got you and they backdoored you. I'm using a precedent that is set in the history of Picture This, where I said I don't like this move.
Yeah, but I
to
just don't
qualify the reason why I don't like this move.
Yes,
that is outside of it being because it's made on me.
I'm beyond that. I'm not looking at like this is 3 years ago. It's a different person at this point. But I just don't think that like this is it's hard for me to compare these two things, because ultimately Max, like, absolutely without question had no other path but win out. With Steven, he gets himself to that final five, and stupidity abounds around him that strategically he was setting himself up to have to win two more rounds, like win 1 at 4 and at 3, which like almost any winner has to be able to like win at some point down the stretch, 1 or 2 rounds. Yes, Steven does win at 5. Sure. I think that he more had to than not win there at 5. But I also still think that Steven could have picked up the pieces with Abby, with Marston, if he had not won the HOH at 5. I don't know what happens.
I don't think so, because you have evidence in the episodes that Ryan is like, "Steve, we got out Mitch, and now Steven has to go." That's literally the first confessional that happens in the episode after this. So I don't think it's a good take to be like, Steven did himself a favor and he can pick it up, because literally the next thing you see after my eviction is Ryan being like, well, we finally got Mitch out of here, and now it's time to get
sure.
You know,
we're also talking about Ryan no confidence Marston. Like,
it doesn't matter, because he still gets a vote.
Sure.
He still gets a vote. So it doesn't matter, because he still ultimately is going to be a vote to evict Steven.
Right. Which is
he doesn't evict Steven, but he does
evict Steven.
At Final Four. Yeah. So there we go. I mean, for me, that's enough evidence that I need to know that Steven couldn't.
Once again, still set up on the stupidity of his final 5 decision to take Parker out for whatever reason. All right, let's move on.
This is never gonna end.
No, it's never gonna end. And I maybe have come to the place where like
I think both things can be kind of true.
Yes, and I think that this is. I can't think you can call this a bad move. I don't think you can call it the greatest move that's ever existed in the history of reality television.
I said I don't love it for me.
Yeah, of course. Right, well, now you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't sit here and say,
I said I don't think it's a good move. Is what I said.
Oh,
I didn't say it was a bad move. I said I don't. I never said it was a bad move. I said I don't think it was a good move.
Right.
I think it's different.
You said,
and then I also do think for me it's not a good move.
Yeah, for you it was.
For me it's a bad. For me it's a bad move.
It was the worst move ever for you.
For me it's a bad, terrible, worst, horrible move I've ever seen in Big Brother Hometowns.
Yeah, and I still think that they took the shot, and you
respect it,
and you cannot fault. How many times have we lost our mind that someone would not take the shot, for crying out loud, like over and over again? There's times that we're like, just take the shot. Now the situation is different because you were aligned together, but you were best positioned to win the game at that point. By far, an advantage in pocket is all that Steven needed to know, and Jason and winning that veto and having you sitting right there ready to be taken down, and the numbers and the potential. Here's the other side of it: the potential of trust with Abby and Marston, because they know they're in a lose-lose situation. I'm finally getting my groove here. I know that we're like trying to wind this down, but I'm finally finding kind of my arguments here. They're in a lose-lose situation. They're not winning with your alliance because they're at the bottom of it. We've said that. They're not winning with the other side because they're on the other side, and they're not going to trust you anyway.
Which I said earlier, and I think is a fault to their overall gameplay.
Sure.
And that they put themselves in the position where they were at the bottom of this alliance of 5, and they did not have the trust needed with the other side to make an entire flip or to make a.
And a lot of that is Jason's fault for like
it is, but it's also Steven's fault because
what did Steven do wrong?
But it doesn't matter. That it's not that he did anything wrong, but in the end of the day, he wasn't going to be the person that was chosen.
Well,
that's important. That's part of the social game. That's the social game. When it came down to push and shove, Steven was not going to get.
But if we flip the script here, and it was you that made this move on Steven, like if it was the other way around, you make this move on Steven, you would be, if you were in that kind of position. I guess it's kind of hard because you weren't in the position because you were at the top of that, but. Right. Steven and Jason, especially Steven, can look at this and say, I'm objectively on the bottom of an alliance here. Like objectively,
Okay, let's say, what if I did this? And I do in season 10. And I take out Daniel Kennedy, who is a big player, kingpin of another side. And what did that get me?
Yeah, I got you evicted.
Swiftly evicted.
Yeah. Right? That was a final 17 or whatever.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter though. It's the same concept, right? Like it's the same concept.
It's not though, because you were on two different sides. You and Steven were on the same side in this situation. So what I'm saying is Steven does the like blood versus water Sierra move where he goes to where she goes to rocks, but she knows she's on the bottom of the Tyson Jervis Monica alliance and decides, all right, I'm going to like try and build something over here to take out Tyson. And so this is Steven's chance to try and forge a path to victory for himself. And yes, it puts him on this island of sorts, but like that's just as like he's in fourth and fifth place in almost both of these situations unless he wins himself to the end. And I think that making the big move from Steven's point of view, you have to look at it and say, all right, I'm going to do this, give myself a chance. I'd rather lose this way, having made the move I knew that I had to make to get out the biggest threat in the game, to kind of have some trust all over here. Try and pick up the pieces with Sarah, which he kind of does. Not enough that it really matters, but he tries. And like there is some like give and take there between the two of them to set himself to have a shot. Yeah, no, and like I said, like if it had worked out for him, we wouldn't be saying anything about this move. Yeah, and I think that if Steven wins at Final Four and Final Three, I don't think we look at this and say, "Oh." Well, I still think we say Steven probably had to win out. Sure. So the conversation is the same. That no matter which way you look at it, if he had won or had he not, had it gone the way that it went, Steven had to win out to win the game. but win out from 5 is way different than winning out from 7, 8, whatever.
7.
Sure, he didn't have to. Well,
yeah.
Yeah,
if he didn't win veto at
Sure.
7, he'd have been gone.
Sure.
I think that is a very firm fact.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Moving on.
Did y'all enjoy that?
Yeah.
Because I don't think I did it.
I'm sure that Steven, if you're watching this.
Oh, I'm sure. I can't wait to get it.
You're probably watching this the night we recorded, honestly. and I'm sorry if I didn't say enough. I could have pulled up the text, but they were from ages ago at this point, so I'm not gonna do that. I think we've both said enough of what we need to say about this move.
And,
all right.
Let us know in a DM who's right.
Who's right? And I will be angry when Mitchell's friends come and say that he's right because they're Mitchell's friends, and that will further.
My friends are your friends. Relax. Relax. The problem is that Steven stuck his foot in his mouth with too many people in the BBH
Yeah, that's
community,
the other thing.
And that's what's going to happen is that people are going to be on my side because he's stuck his foot in his mouth to play the villain.
Stupid.
But that's just me. Anyway.
All right. So
we got to talk about the double eviction.
Yes, we moved to double eviction.
It's really not.
We've basically talked about it at this point.
Yeah,
Jason is very toast, and he's running in circles, trying to save himself.
I think we would be remiss to say that Sarah, to not mention the fact that Sarah is the HOH, which we talked about in the last round of the last podcast of the way that Sarah wields power and really doesn't suffer the consequences of that. Because listen, I mean, again, look here. You're gonna say that, we're just gonna say that, with at the final 5, Ryan and Abby save Sarah and evict Parker, but really, who's not sitting on the block here at the double eviction? Ryan and Abby. So
why would they?
That's what I'm saying.
That's
the whole point. Is the strength of the way that Sarah wields her power here in the thing. The alliance of 5 is broken. She has no qualms about putting Jason and Steven up on the block. She's able to do it easily without getting any blood on her hands. Nobody's mad at her. She saves face with Abby and Ryan, who ultimately are going to save her life in the game of Final 5. It's, again, maybe results oriented, but I think it's a great show and display of how Sarah's game impacts her decision making when it comes to her having power, the way that she plays upfront and loyal, and Jason and Steven just burned her number 1 ally.
Mitchell is what he's doing here is he's setting up his defense for Sarah as maybe the top winner up to this point, and I'm beginning my defense to push back on that.
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I just think that no, it is. And I'll be honest. I'll be honest right now. I think you're right. I think I might be doing that because she's not going to make a mistake.
Okay.
She doesn't make a single mistake.
Here's my first issue. I agree with you. I agree with you. There's fine. But once again, this, first of all, and I'm not gonna, this is I don't need to run with this as throwing shade, but she won Deal or No Deal. So whatever, from the comp wins, comp win side,
who cares about that?
Not super, whatever, as an element, whatever. But sure, this is a nice little move, but it's not the most
it's the correct move.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, sure.
So what's your issue with it?
I don't have an issue with it. What I have an issue with, is you praising this. I'm
not praising it. I said it's a good move. The strength of the 3 times that she wields HOH and doesn't get any blood on her hands.
Yes,
that is a fact. Those are facts, and those are not me praising and blowing them up out of proportion. That is the truth. She held 3 HOHs over the course of the season. She never gets in trouble for them. Yeah. She uses them to influence the way that she makes her, how she progresses through the game.
I think it would have been very hard for her to do to get in any trouble with this HOH.
Why is that? Why is that?
I understand. I know where you're going with this because
it's the strength of her game.
Well, no,
the strength of her social game.
No, that's not what I thought you were going to say. I think putting Steven and Jason up once again isn't rocket science. And I thought you were going to say, well, that's because they shouldn't have taken me out.
No, we're past that. I'm over it.
But like, yeah, like, and that's part of the strength of her game for sure. But like, you know, a volcano erupted right in front of her face, and all she had to do was be at the bottom and just like pick up the pieces and just like it's nice, it's great, it's correct. I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying that
it's not flashy, which is why you don't like it.
I don't have an issue with the non-flash. I'm just saying like this to me when we get to the winner rankings, I'm not going to be like, man, like her move at the double eviction to take out Jason and Callie, or what would have been Jason and Steven had Steven not won the veto. I'm not going to be like, this is what makes her like this moment, like this was her moment, you know. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's fair, but I also I just want to point out that like I feel like we have a history on this podcast of praising the crazy bombastic players like Connor, who makes a million mistakes and is able to recover by the strength of his frenetic, crazy energy, versus what the conversation will be. Because it's really hard to compare their two games. You have someone who's incredibly level-headed and plays from a very social standpoint and plays in like a flawless, mistake-free game outside of talking about Taylor Jackwith in the first in the main house chat, like in the first round. That's going to be the hard part of the conversation. But I mean, just looking forward, I would argue that the same conversations will be had about Sam next season. Again, someone who plays pretty much a flawless game, has maybe even a better game because makes a flashy move at the Final Four and cutting his number one ally to ultimately win the game. You know, I don't know. It's hard to compare because we're already having the conversation, but I can't find a flaw in the game that Sarah plays.
Right.
And so that's hard for me to look there and be like, well, she's not at least in the top tier of winners.
Yeah.
Is her game interesting? Not really. Sorry, Sarah. I love you so much. But your game is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of flash to it. She's not good at giving confessionals. Like, she's a good confessional giver, but she doesn't give them. You know, she didn't give enough. And it's kind of like she picked the right people and she moved at the right time to get to the end and to win. I can't find a flaw with that.
Sure. Well, let's save it because we have like a few more episodes to get through before we get there. But we'll have the whole conversation. All right. So she wins this. She puts up Steven, Jason, and Callie, which once again makes a lot of sense. Is the right move. Pretty much no other thing for her to do at this point. Steven wins the veto. Jason is running in circles trying to save himself, but like
the 8-minute video of the lore of BBH6.
Yeah, and then Marston's like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not gonna watch it. And it's very funny.
And honestly, Ryan, love you so much. That's why you're a bad player. Like, you should still watch it because there may be information.
Sure.
There was probably. I mean, doesn't he say in his confessional he's gonna expose every alliance that's existed in the game? Like, that's information that you could use potentially. Right.
Yeah, I sure.
You should watch it. You should watch it.
If he watches that video, maybe he actually takes out Sarah at Final Five. I can get there with you. But that confessional from Marston is funny because he says, I got to rattle up the cattle. He says Jason is bonkers. And as they say in Texas, the cowboy hat's fitting a little too tight. This is very funny. And
I need Ryan Marston on a season of a reality television.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, I don't care what it is. I need him.
What do you make of now that you're out of the game? What do you make of Steven's I ain't going nowhere confessional where he wins the veto? Do you hate it still?
I mean, it's like one of those things where it's hard because Steven is absolutely right in his assessment that and you said it last episode, that I think in 9 times out of 10, I'd probably be living for him in any other season of BBH. Like, there's a really high percentage of that. And it is hard for me to get out of my bias about, like, but like I said last time, the difference between Steven the person and Steven the character, like, it's hard. It's hard. I think it's still, for me, it's like, it's just laying it on a lot too thick.
Sure.
But it's fine.
I mean, that's fun. That's
good for him.
I mean, yeah,
good for him. He won.
Yeah, he did.
Happy for him.
Abby goes up, and so now you have Jason, Callie, and Abby. And like, I just kind of had this thought now, like, why didn't Abby go home here?
I have no idea. Well, she didn't go home because Ryan.
Yeah, we're at finals. Who are the voters? We have 2 voters, and it's Ryan and Parker, right?
Yeah.
At final 7.
Yeah. So I do feel like, I mean,
there's 3 voters. There's a third voter. Who's the other voter?
Steven.
Oh, Steven. Duh.
So Steven votes for Jason, which Parker is not going to do. Ryan votes for who? Ryan votes.
Steven doesn't evict.
He votes to save Jason.
No, he doesn't. He votes to save. He knows that Jason's a sinking ship. He votes to save Abby. I think this was unanimous. To save Abby, which is just interesting. I guess like everyone was just kind of done with Callie because she wasn't providing anyone anything at this point, and that's maybe why she goes. Jason was a sinking ship. He was always going home. In a double eviction, there's always the one person that, like, as no matter how hard they try, they're going home. But you got to think that, like,
I wonder if Abby being the renom plays into that at all. If it was like they already knew. Like, I wonder if Steven already knew that Ryan and Park, because I do feel like after I get evicted, there is this like swing where instead of Steven and Jason swinging over to work with Ryan and Abby and Callie, Sarah and Parker kind of swing over to work with Abby and Ryan. So, and which is what we kind of were getting at the crux of a little bit, 20 minutes ago, of like, maybe they should have just flipped completely.
Right.
And thrown the 3 of us under the bus, because that might have been the better move, because what ends up happening is Sarah rises to power and she does what's in her best interest and kind of tries to protect Ryan and Abby here.
I'd be willing to bet, like, I guess thinking more on it, that's probably what Steven wanted to do. Like, I can't imagine that, like, he probably still wanted to have good relationships with people like Sarah and Parker, but Parker's not doing anything. Right. So he probably is trying to throw his lot over there. But because of the Sarah and Ryan relationship, that probably is what keeps this from happening. Which that's one of those things that Steven probably couldn't do anything about anyway. He probably wanted to, like, pull them and say, hey, they're working against you directly. But once Steven was able to make that move against them, it ended up villainizing them ultimately, really mainly Jason, but Steven as, the secondary person at that point.
Well, he's complicit. I mean, he used the veto. So
yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely in it. We do have a strong final 5. No, we don't. Never mind. I take that back. I think, this is why I wrote that. So I wrote strong final 5, but this is what I said in the moment. But if you look at this final 5, you have Parker, Ryan, and Abby in it, who have all not played the best of games. They're not, like, none of Parker's not played. Once Maddie went, Parker effectively was gone too. Abby and Ryan, like, were trying and, like, they were playing. It's not like they were absent, but they just, like, don't really have a strong case here at the end. Right. Abby wins out. It wins over Ryan if she were to win that final HOH. But anyway, we get to the final 5 and Steven wins HOH, and he gives a great confessional talking about his options here. He says, I can go after the returners, I can go after the remains of the hard hitters, or he says option 3, which is going after the 2 biggest threats to beating me at the end, which are Sarah and Abby.
Which is the right time to do this.
Yeah.
I feel like, for me, there is a long-standing history of, you get to final 6, you got to take the shot at who's going to beat you.
Right.
Which is, so I have no issues with this move at all.
Right. Which, not to get, I think if you're still in the game at this point and Steven wins this HOH, I think you're going up, which is fine.
No, I'm out of the house with my advantage.
Oh, that's right. Well,
or I'm out of the house with my advantage.
Okay, well, if we take that off, the table and say that you didn't have that, if we take that,
100%. And I think I respect it a lot
well,
more.
But what I'm saying, that's not even my point. My point is that like getting you out here is really difficult, even at 5, because you still have the veto to contend with, and like Sarah probably still protecting you in some form or fashion. Steven without a vote, I think that. And in reality, you're not going home because you have the advantage. But I think that supports the move a little bit more at that point, thinking of it that way. Anyway, not important.
I'm he goes just let it lie.
He goes after Sarah and Abby, which is the right move. Got to do it. Yeah. And Marston finally wins the veto, wins something, and he totally screws it up, like I've been alluding to this whole time. How can you? You've been quiet every time I've said this. How can you? Go.
I just don't know if I think it's the same. Again, I'll just go back to a precedent that I said before, and why I defended Sarah taking Greg to the final 3 and not cutting him at final 4 in season 5, because you have to get to the end. I understand why she didn't do it. I understand why why she didn't cut Greg, because she has to think about. Yes, you can get to the final 4 or the final 3, but you have to figure out how to get to the final 2. And I think for Ryan, the thought process is, I've had a great relationship with Sarah this entire game. She's the only person that's been on my side 100% of the time. If anybody's going to continue to potentially take me further in the game, it's Sarah. She's the only person that's going to do that for him. I mean, Abby, yes, probably, but I think the relationship that Ryan and Sarah has is better than the one that Abby and Ryan have. So I don't have, like, do I think that it is the right move? No. I think they probably should have taken Sarah out.
Right. Or even Abby. It didn't really matter. Abby. One of them.
They should have taken one of them out. But I understand why Ryan would make the move to protect the 2 people that have been good to him the entire game.
Sure. I can see that comparison to the Sarah thing. The difference with the Sarah thing is Sarah loses 5-4 in the final jury and like is playing a very strong game. She knows it. She knows she's in contention. Ryan is being told by people, which is not a thing you tell people that are actually playing like this. Like, I mean, like it or not, like he's being told you can't win this game right now. Like,
right. Maybe he doesn't care then.
But he does. Like, you can see it in his confessionals. And I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's Ryan's thought process. I think the only thought process is my relationships with these people, which is fine. It's
a game about relationships. It's why Alex takes Gray to the end in BBH8. Right. It's the same. It's the same. We're gonna have the same conversation then. As you hear, and ultimately what it comes down to is relationships, and that this is a social game.
Yeah, but those relationships are the ones that have to vote for you at the end. And my point is, send one of them to the jury. Like Sarah's someone that's going to vote, could potentially vote for Ryan Marston at the end. Ryan gets eviscerated by every single person except for Parker in this final 5.
But also too, though, doesn't Ryan think that you got to look at it from his perspective? He has a story. He was evicted.
Sure.
And he battles back, and he's at the bottom of this, alliance of 5 that's coming after him. In his mind, he has the story to win, and he does. He has a story. Yes. Well, anytime you get to the end, you deserve to win. You may not be as deserving as the other person, but in Ryan's mind, he has a deserving story.
Sure.
And he just has to figure out how to get there. And I don't fault
him. I don't want to open up a can of worms by saying this, but how can you say at final 5 it's time to take the shot, and then Ryan, you defend him not taking the shot?
Well, no, that's fair. That's very fair. What I'm saying is that I understand why Ryan makes the move that he makes.
Sure. Right.
And I also said I don't think it's the right move.
Yeah.
I think he should have taken one of them out. But I understand, and I will at least defend Ryan a little bit, because I understand why he did what he did. And like I said, it's the same reason that Alex takes Gray to the final, takes out Kaylee at final 3,
sure,
who would have lost unanimously. So
yeah, I think, this is the nail in Steven's coffin, but like Marston's trying to do, like and
if he takes out one of them at Final 5, does Steven waltz to the end?
Maybe.
That's a very valid thought process that he may have had. Did he have that thought process? I don't know.
Right.
But
Steven
he might have.
Steven, and that's another reason why I can defend the move for Steven, because if Marston makes the, by admission, correct move, Steven potentially waltzes to the end. Now, that's not what happens. That's fine. But like Marston, it's like he makes a half measure here, and the half measure is wins a competition finally, and the other half is like not doing anything really with it and sealing his own fate to lose the game. Now, and you're right in one thing, because Ryan says it in a bunch of confessionals. He says over and over again, like, I'm going to show why I played a worthy game. Like, I'm going to prove to Steven why what he's saying to me isn't true. The reality is he doesn't do that, because you can't, like, Steven, you got to know he's becoming a juror, and that's the narrative that he is telling. And it's the narrative that goes to the jury, and it's very true. I don't think that pushes the needle.
I think it's pretty documented that Ryan wasn't going to win the game.
Right.
Like, so, but we have to at least try and understand the perspective of why he made that move. I mean, it's the same thing. There's lots of things in BBH history of like why people make moves based on personal things or, personal narratives or personal stories. That's maybe not the right move, but that's part of the game too.
Right.
So yes, we can critique it from a strategy sense.
Right.
It wasn't the right move, but I understand why he did
And
it.
I'm sorry I keep finding arguments.
Josh just said I'm here to fight today.
No, it's not. What I mean by finding arguments is I mean like I keep like more reasons keep coming to me as to why like I'm very much on board with the move as we've dubbed it. Yes, there's an element of putting yourself in position to win to the end that is bad, but there is also an element of putting yourself in position to win your way to the end against people you can beat in competitions. That is strategy. I'm going.
Yeah, but he didn't though. That's the thing though.
Well, but he had every intention to. Like that, he had every intention to. And this HOH doesn't go his way because Marston.
Well, then maybe he should have put Ryan up on the block. I mean,
sure.
Like you don't want Ryan to mess it up for you. Put him on the block next to somebody who's a bigger threat.
Once again, the strategy is I'm taking out someone who's a threat to me competition wise, and you only have track record to go off of, and those are the only two people at that point that really that have won anything real. Like Parker won some comps, but it was like the plague and the whatever. Like, so Steven goes into this final five as the front runner in most respects, because he has probably the better comp performance up to that point, and that's all he needs. And then he's going to take out the people that he can't beat, like Sarah and like Abby. So anyway, that's not what happens.
Well, and that's the thing, is that it's not what happens.
Yeah. And Parker goes home here. And then Abby, this is like a 2-for-1 episode. So Abby wins HOH, and it's a pretty la-di-da final four here. I think that everything kind of makes sense from this point onward. Abby wins. She wins it both. She wins the HOH and the veto. She puts up Steven and Sarah, doesn't use the veto, leaving Marston with the vote to evict. And Steven is the biggest threat on the board. As I just said, he has to take out Steven here. Even if he wasn't the biggest threat on the board, I'm led to believe that Ryan would take out Steven here, because why would he now take out?
He's been wanting to do it.
Right. And he's been wanting to.
Like I said, that was literally that episode 10, first confessional. No one had Jason's back. We have to turn towards targeting Steven now. It's just why I think, again, not to do it again, but the proof in the confessionals is that the minute I was gone, all the eyes turned to Steven. So I just don't think that's a good move.
Sure.
But we move on. So good job.
But there's a good chance you win the game if they don't take you out.
I think I would give it like 60-40.
I'll give you 65-35 and we'll call it even.
Girl, that is so trifling. That is literally so trifling.
All right. We head to the finale, which honestly, not a lot of excitement in this finale, apart from this tiebreaker in this part 3 of the final HOH. You get to see some of part 1, which is fun. In the finale, you don't really see part 2, whatever. Max is live with me in studio for the finale, which is fun. But we get to the final part 3 of the final HOH, the jury questioning as always, and we go to a tiebreaker. And it was like the number of letters in X amount of C4, whatever it was. And Abby puts 420, which
so bad.
It's real bad.
I just
real bad.
It's hard because on one hand, in the moment, I knew that Sarah had to win.
Right.
And I was rooting for my friend. I was rooting for my ally, and I wanted her to win. Retrospectively, it's like heartbreaking because we know that Abby has lost that, in 3rd place in season 3, and that ultimately is
and at least in this chance, she had a chance,
right? And she
being in part 3,
and she blows it by just like a crazy high amount. Did you get that joke?
Hilarious.
I'm so funny. But like she just blows it like crazy, and so it's sad for my friend Abby, but like in the moment I was like pumped because I was like, girl, bye. And we knew that like the chances of one of them cutting the other person was very high, and that Ryan was probably going to lose 7-0. Like, we knew that was pretty high, or 6-1 at least,
No, and so she cuts Ryan. There's not, she cuts Abby. Sarah cuts Abby, takes Ryan to the end, and Abby calls herself Paul, which is a very funny Big Brother reference. Finishing 3rd place. Well, Paul finished in 2nd place twice, but finishing it at the finale in the same position twice. It's pretty funny. And we could like march our way through these jury questions and these jurors, but like
there really isn't anything.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the two things that are important to the narrative of the story are like, not to toot my own horn, but like me calling Sarah the ultimate chameleon and how she maneuvered through the game, I think is an important piece of her story. And then the other thing that's just interesting, I think, is Steven just being like, Marston, you got voted out of the game. Like,
right.
Girl, bye. Right. But like, I don't really find a lot of the rest of it to be super engaging or super entertaining. I think of season 6 is in the storytelling, and this being a live finale, it's not that interesting.
Yeah. Marston he tries to tell his story. I was voted out, got all the way back, like all these things. But if anything, that hurts him more than helps him because no one wants to hear how he got another chance in the game. But I get it. Like that's the point to play. Sarah talks about her positioning in the alliances, and how information was flowing to her and how she knew a lot of things. There was like it's revealed that Sarah knew about the BB Pandora is dead moment before it happened. That was a surprise information reveal to Ryan, which was kind of cool. That's a fun thing to see happen. Steven comes in and like eviscerates Ryan very kindly, respectfully, but does, which is good. No one else says anything interesting. Callie and Brianna say, "Why should I vote for you?" Basically. Parker asks, "Are you really 6'8", Ryan?"
There was nobody had anything. Like, that's the thing, is that like we didn't have anything. We knew the jury who we were voting for.
Yeah.
Most of us was Sarah, Abby, Ryan. There was a few people who were like Abby, Sarah, Ryan, like as an order, but it was over the minute that the final 3 part wrapped up. So I am interested what a like Sarah Abby final looks like. I don't know if you want to run the numbers on that.
I still think that's Sarah, because you got Parker and you and Steven that probably all go Sarah's way. I think maybe Steven goes Abby. Callie and Brianna don't go Abby.
No, I don't think they would.
Yeah, I think Sarah wins that too.
Yeah. At least 4-3, if not
5-2. But if Abby wins the final HOH and she cuts Sarah, I mean, it is important to say probably that she wins 7-0 as well over Ryan. So, more on, and that's
we did have a lot of respect for Abby's game in the moment of like she was on the block and like we respect.
I was gonna say that's more on the strength of the strength of them not wanting to vote for Ryan, but in the moment, you guys did did respect Abby's game.
Yeah, it was like
journey at that point.
It was like, okay, Sarah obviously played the better game of the three of them, like maneuvering and using power and yada yada yada, being aligned with people. Abby played a resilient game. She was at the bottom the entire time, but somehow she made it to the end. We have a lot of respect for that. And then Ryan got voted out, so we're probably not going to vote for him. Like that was the litmus of the jury. So,
okay, so let's get to these rankings because I think that's what we're gonna have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. I still don't know exactly where I land on this. I do think that this is going to be a really hard conversation to have because it's hard to compare the games. Like so far with the first 5 winners, I honestly feel like all of them played similarly in the sense that they all had ups and downs, they made mistakes, they all had a lot of power at times, and we've ranked them appropriately in the sense of it being, Max Parsons at the bottom, Max Teddy, Connor, Jenny, and then Greg at the top. With Sarah, her game, like I was saying earlier, it's so different from all of these people. She perfectly is positioned between the two powers. She has great relationships with pretty much everybody in the game. She's only in danger at the final 5, which is impressive. She wields power 3 times. She makes the right move each time at the place in the game. She doesn't make flashy moves, but she makes the right move for the time and the place that she's in the game. I can't point to a flaw in her game. So how do you compare that to maybe the more dynamic and the more bombastic gameplay, the more interesting gameplay? This is why Kim Spradlin and Boston Rob are sitting at the top of the RHAP best winners rankings for the same exact reason. Like, were their wins interesting? Not really, but you can't. It's so hard to find a flaw in the game that it's like, well, when I weigh it against other people, it's like I think it's better because there was never a chance that they were in danger. So, and that's where I struggle.
Sure.
Because
all right. So
is Sarah the best game player on this list of 6 people? No. But is she the best winner of these 6 games that we have talked about extensively? I think she might be. And it's hard to make that. It's hard. It's a tough comparison to make.
So I've landed. I know where I've pretty much landed on this. I think that the argument needs to veer away from it's the quiet game over the flashy game. I don't like to necessarily call it versus the flashy game because yes, Greg makes flashy moves. Yes, Max makes attempts to make flashy moves and all these things, but and I don't want this to necessarily sound insulting to Sarah because I don't necessarily intend it to be, but she was a passenger of this season more than I hate to use all the survivor lingo versus the pilot of her own narrative. She was very much a passenger receiving information, hopping in the right buses at the right time. She was in the right alliance, the one that was winning power. Mm-hmm. She was firmly behind you out in front. And so I have a hard time.
One could argue those are all strategic choices.
Sure, but I don't see it as necessarily I just wonder, had Sarah had her back against the wall, would she have been in a situation where she could flip the game around in her favor, have the influence to really make, I don't want to just say big moves, but to make moves needed to not necessarily get her out of trouble because she wasn't in trouble and that's great. I just don't know if she had the social influence more than just in the right camp, hunkering down the right spot, getting all the right information and pushing just the nice, easy right buttons down the stretch.
You don't think she did that at Final 7?
And no, that's what I was saying before. I think that was it was the easiest move in the whole wide world to put up Jason and Steven.
But
and
she goes from losing her number one ally to
to going against the people that took out her number one ally.
Yeah, but she also pivots in that moment. It's not that she just. How many times do people get blindsided on Survivor and then they go back to working with the same people? It's she pivots in that moment and flips over with Parker to work more with Ryan and Abby, which ultimately saves her at the final 5, gets her to final 3 because they're working towards getting Steven and Jason out. I think
Sure,
I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with you, and I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying.
I can't look at that and say that that's like the like. I don't think she pulled herself up by her bootstraps to do this. No, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm with you, like, on that. Like it, but to me, it's not like I don't even need her to like take the bull by the horns or all these things. She just played this nice game, and I just can't say that it's better than some of these others who. Yes, occasionally got themselves in trouble, though I would argue that Greg never got himself in trouble and still made like all the right moves and made the big moves.
Greg was on the block 4 times.
Sure.
So he did something to get himself in that situation.
Okay, then maybe he did get himself in trouble, but he got himself out of all those situations with his influence and with his strategy.
Sarah got him out of all those situations.
Yes, but that is that. I mean, there's influence involved in that. So here's where I'm landing on this, and this may be a hot take. I have her at 4. I have her behind Connor, Jenny, and Greg, because those are all 3 people that to me like got in the driver's seat and drove as hard as they could. I don't see Sarah as someone who was like played this like it's harsh to put her that low or this early on, but I think she's going to stay in the upper list for a little while. Like I predict that Sam's going to go lower than her. I don't know. The more I predict that, I don't know. I don't know. The more
I think Gray. If I had to like do this right now, like, and you can cut this out later if you want to, and you don't want to like spill the sauce beforehand,
right?
But I mean, for the top 10, I think for me, it's like Greg and Sarah at the top, but Greg, Sarah, and Kieran at the top. And then you have like Pietro, Gray, Jenny, Connor as a tier. And then you have Max, Sam, and Max.
We'll get into that. But yeah, right. Okay. So right now I do have Sarah at 4, and I may change that as we go along.
And I'm willing to recognize my like bias in the situation in that like she was my ally and someone I played and was rooting for. And I'm willing to, and I want to defer to you on this just for that reason alone. Like, and I think you had a bigger scope of like in the moment. I mean, I do want to say at that point in time, you did call it like the most dominating win of.
I agree. But like we've done many a times, history has changed our perspective and our how we analyze these things. And I think I appreciate the comparison to the Boston Robs and Kims of the world in that respect, that like it's hard to point to a flaw, but those 2 people like dominated their season. I can't say that Sarah dominated this season. Even if you take away the episodes, and I just go off of my memory, I'm not like, man, like just because Sarah didn't give confessionals, like we could easily say, oh, she didn't like do this, that, or the other. Even taking the episodes out, I'm like, she didn't like dominate the season in that way. And not that any winner up to this point has dominated their season in a way that I would. And I think it's going to take until maybe Kieran to say like Kieran dominated her season. And we'll get to that. So right now that's where I'm at. She was a passenger that played a very nice, quiet game that was very worthy of a win, very worthy of a 7-0 win. She did everything right, but like I value the games above her as people who got in the driver's seat and did anything and everything they could to get every step of the way, even if it at times meant that things were harder for them as a result. So that's why I have Greg, Jenny, Connor, Sarah, Teddy, Parsons.
And we'll leave it at that. And I'm not going to fight about it, and I'm not going to argue about it. We'll leave it at that. That'll be the ranking that we go forward with at this point. I mean, at the end of the day, this is your gig. I'm here to
Yeah, but you can also have your own. You can.
I don't
have,
want it. I want us to be on the same page. Like I will have my own opinions, obviously, but like
Yeah.
I do want us to like. I want our list to be like at the end of the project, we're like, hey everybody, this was like the results of this project. I don't want it to be like here was Josh's results and here was Mitchell's results. Like
okay, so what about the season rankings? Because I think this is also an interesting conversation.
It is going to be. I'm absolving. I will give my opinion after you do. I'm going to absolve myself to start the conversation because I want to know where you're at with it.
Okay.
Versus everything.
So this is a very, very, very watchable season. Like it is so much fun to watch in every respect. And while we've always put it at number one, I am not putting it at number one. I have it at number two. Okay. And I have season 5, season 6. And the main reason that I'm going that way is because both seasons have really fun storylines, really good to follow, narrated well, incredibly fun to watch, all those good things. I think where season 5 tips the scale a little higher than season 6 is that the gameplay is better in season 5 overall. There's much better gameplay going on, and that makes sense. It's all returners, like you would think that would be the case. I wouldn't necessarily say that's the reason why. I just think season 5 has really strong gameplay from a lot of people. Where like if you look at the final 5 of season 5, Greg, Sarah, Leighton, Bradley, Max, you have just Leighton in there. That's kind of the dud, where in here you have Abby, Ryan, Sarah, Steven, and Parker. And it's really a 2-horse race with Abby kind of limping behind a little bit. So from the gameplay perspective, I think the storylines are really fun in both. Season 5 is really silly. And I really appreciate that. And then you get this really great gameplay. So I have it as season 5, season 6, season 1, 2, 3, 4.
Cool. I'm okay with that. It hurts my ego slightly, but I agree with you in the sense. I agree to you to an extent. I did personally have it as number 1 because I think the story is much more legible in a rewatch. I think season 5 we really got a lot out of our commentary. Sure. I don't know if you get as much out of just watching the episodes for season 5 as you do for season 6, but given the like comprehensiveness of like our project and what we are able to dissect, I can agree with you.
And I don't want to be contrarian to what we've always said just for the sake of it either. Like, and I'm wanting to fight that because it's close. Like, it's so close.
Yeah, it's splitting hairs. I mean, I think if I honestly feel like season 6 is the season that I'm always gonna tell somebody to watch first. Yeah. If they want to watch a BBH season that is very easy to follow, very easy to understand what's going on, and has a very clear story. Like, I think that's always going to be the number 1 on my list. In terms of best seasons, I can understand and get behind the season 5 is better than season 6. So I'm not going to fight that.
And they're both really good. And like, and I think they're going to sit up here for a little while. Oh, truly. I actually really do. Like, seriously think that these two are going to sit at the top. I mean, I could be wrong for sure. But
no, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong.
Now to the villains.
Yeah.
I don't know what the entries are here. Truly.
Well, so the conversation really is me, Steven, and Jason.
Right. And are any of you really villains? I mean, the most villainous thing is you and the Pandora thing.
Well, and that's the thing. So, like, Steven plays a villainous character.
Right.
And makes whatever side of the fence you fall on, makes a villainous move. I think at the end of the day, we would all call it betraying an ally a villainous move. This is what I have, and you just tell me, because and I'm always going to defend myself in the sense that, like, yes, I know I come across as a villain in confessionals, and I did make that move with Pandora, but we already talked through why I had to make that move and what the implications were of all of that. And I was very loyal to the hard hitters.
Right.
The whole season. So this is what I have. You tell me what you think. I have, so bumping off the list, Who got the boot? Let's see. All right. Getting the boot off the list, Connor and Max. So they are not on the list anymore. So 10th is Sarah from season 5. Josh Gardner, Gray, Ashton, myself at number 5, Leah at number 4, Steven at number 3, and then Greg and Greg at the top. Because ultimately with Jason, I feel like Jason was the puppet that Steven used to make a villainous move. I don't think Jason ultimately Jason talked a big game about cutting his allies or cutting his number 1 ally. But I just don't see it as villainous enough to be like on the villain rankings. That's where I sit with it. Leah did play a villainous game. I think she played a more villainous game than I did. Ashton and I play a very similar game. We get on camera and we start yelling. But like really in the game, we're just loyal to the people that we like. If you're against us, you're against us. And we're not playing with you and you got to go. But we're ultimately loyal to the people that we are with. But we just get on camera and sound like everybody's making us angry and we yell and scream and pitch a fit, and that's why I have us like right next to each other.
Yeah. I'm cool with that. That's more your list than mine, and that's perfectly fine. So yeah, a lot of this is an interesting one. I feel like we could talk about season 6 forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, because of all of the different layers of this, from an analyst perspective and from the player perspective and from the lived experience from the episodes. I mean, we can do that with a lot of them, but especially ones where you played, and we'll have that again, probably less so in season 10 when we get there, not mainly because you weren't there as long, but but also that's like a pretty straightforward narrative when we get there. Yeah, that's it for this one. I think we've wrung this sponge dry. I'm sure that we could find other things to talk about, but this is a very fun season, a season that launched us into a new era of BBH. The last it
really did
essentially the last pre-pandemic season. So the next one's all 7, 8, 9, 10 all happen really quick. Back to back. So it's gonna be fun to kind of track.
I mean, even 11 to an extent is really close in there as well.
Yep. But yeah, the next thing, go check out season 7. That is what is coming up next. An interesting season. Go ahead.
I mean, traditionally looked at as like one of a lower tier season of Big Brother Hometowns, but every time I go back and watch it, the pre-jury shines for me. I think part 1 will be a very fun thing to talk about. And there's some interesting things that happen down the stretch. There's some really great characters in season 7. I mean,
like Bobby,
Jayla, and you have Jayla and Lauren who come and are really fun characters. Shelby, who is a polarizing character, in this season. You have Sam and Jake who play super strong games. Max is back. Gonna be doing
Bradley's
back. Bradley's back again. It's a good cast. It's a good cast of characters. So I'll be excited to talk about it.
Yeah, it will be. There's some interesting, overall narrative is very not interesting, but like the intricacies of what happens kind of from day to day are a lot of fun, and some fun moves that get made in that season. So I'm excited to get into that. So go ahead and pick that up if you haven't purchased it already. Go ahead and get season 7 of Picture This. Hope you enjoyed this one. For Mr. Stokes, I'm Josh Consalvo. We will see you next time on season 7.
Sorry, my internet sucks.